Doja Cat at the VMAs. If you have not seen Doja at the VMAs, she had probably one of the most iconic looks I've seen at the VMAs in a while, probably right next to Sabrina Carpenter and a few other people who showed up on that carpet. However, that makeup was stunning, and I'm almost positive a full face of MAC now that she's the new global ambassador for MAC. I am obsessed with this look, and I have to recreate it. Now, if you're not familiar, I forgot it. Now, if you're not familiar with the iconic little stunt that she pulled where she had a baker turn the Lady Danger lipstick from MAC into a candy so she can go ahead and bite into it on the red carpet. It was so fun, and honestly, it's living in my head rent free, and I just needed to recreate it. So I think that's what we're gonna do today. So let's get started. I still don't have my clapper back. So the artist who did Doja's makeup is, I'm gonna really mess this up and I'm so sorry, Shablam Gella, or Gella. Huh? I'm not quite sure, but I know it's one of those two. Hopefully I'm close. That artist did a bunch of amazing looks on so many people. He's done Shay Mitchell, he clearly does Doja a lot. He's done Ashley Graham, so he is no stranger to a full beat and a set face, and he did it again. So I'm gonna take my best attempt at it in hopes that I can recreate this gorgeous, gorgeous glam. I just wet the whole bottom of my lash. So I've already done my skincare, and I have primed with the EMBRYOLISSE cream. I'm also gonna add an extra prime on top because I just don't feel like I have enough moisture in my skin today. I feel like for some reason something is just sucking the life out of me. That could be a series of things, but what do I know? So on top of the EMBRYOLISSE, I'm gonna go in with the Danessa Myricks Juice Boost for a little bit of moisture and glow. You guys know I love this. And this face that I'm doing is going to be mainly MAC, but not entirely MAC, because unfortunately I do not have access to the entire kit. MAC on their post of this look listed out every single one of the products. So I'm gonna use the equivalent of them and the ones that I do have now. So it looks like here it says that they use the Studio Fix Plus Foundation and NC30. I am NC25, I believe. Studio Fix Conceal and Correct Palette in medium deep. Studio Fix Fluid SPF 15 in NC45. Studio Radiance 24-hour Luminous Lift Concealer in NW25. And Mineralized Blush in Lovejoy. So I have the Studio Fix liquid and the powder. I'm gonna be using that, and I also actually just recently got the Everywhere All Over face pen, which it is definitely much lighter than my skin tone. So I'm gonna have some fun and play around with that on my face when it comes to trying to match this as best as possible. So I'm gonna stop yapping, I'm gonna get straight into it. I ran out of my palette, so I've been using this case for a foundation base because I had hurt my wrist, so I can't really be using it the same way that I was using it before. But we're going to be putting the MAC Studio Fix in shade, and oh, excuse me, my shade is NC35. That makes so much more sense. I have a lot of returning to do. Oops. So before I get started, I am going to use the Sephora Best Skin Ever underneath to spot conceal a little bit because we're having some tough days in the acne realm today, and I'm very red. So I'm going to spot conceal under here. Now, usually I would use a thicker concealer, but the thicker concealer I have doesn't quite match me right now, and I don't want to use the one in my kit. So we're using this Sephora one to spot conceal. So I'm just spot concealing before I put any foundation on and blending in with a dome brush here. And this is just gonna cover up anything that we want that's red, because the redness isn't enough to go in with a green color corrector. It's just enough to go in with the concealer. Now the trick with spot concealing is that you want to, I put way too much on this spot. You want to make sure that you are leaving the area that you want covered a little bit slightly unblended, and then everything else you can blend outwards. Now obviously I'm doing way too much here, but a little goes a long way in this case. We will deal with this problem when it becomes a problem. But make sure that you're tapping over the area you want to conceal, and then you can buff the edges on the side. Remember, no one's really gonna see this part. This is gonna be underneath the foundation, so it doesn't have to be all that precise and pristine, just making sure that it's there. And my nose always gets red, and it doesn't matter how much concealer I put, I can never seem to cover it entirely. So I am gonna spot conceal this nose pretty liberally. So on the back of this palette, I put NC35 from MAC. This is the Studio Fix, not the Studio Radiance. So this one's gonna be a lot more matte than we think. So I'm gonna start in the center of the face here. I'm going to slightly buff this out. You see that I'm like doing a tapping motion first, just to place things where I want them to be placed and pull them back. I think the most ironic thing about Studio Fix and me using it now in my adult life and really enjoying it is that this is the first foundation I ever used when I started doing makeup. I actually bought NW45 in the original Studio Fix foundation, and I rubbed that all over my face for the theater days. I was bright orange. That was just the range they had. That was the undertone. And I was so ready. I thought I was doing it perfectly. My literal introduction to doing makeup was MAC Studio Fix. So I guess we're coming full circle. Little 13-year-old Ashley is having her moment here. And I actually have the right shade of foundation this time, even though it doesn't quite look like it, since I do look kind of crazy on one side of my face. But this is kind of a full circle moment for me. I am a MAC girl, and I've always been a MAC girl. We saw how a little went a long way with this foundation, so there's no need to overuse it or over pump it. Usually 2 pumps is enough, as long as you have it on a steel palette. If you're doing it on the back of your hand, you may need to use more because your skin will absorb it. You know the whole 9 yards. The sponge absorbs it, your skin absorbs it, the brush doesn't, the palette doesn't. Be mindful when you're using your foundations, especially expensive ones, because you will just be wasting your money by using 4, 5, 6 pumps. Now that we look like a walking corpse, it's time to add the concealer. So this concealer is very light. It is not the right shade for me. I got NC20. That simply is not it. So on the back of this palette, I am actually going to put a little bit of if it opens, a little bit of NC20 and a little bit of this Sephora Collection concealer. I think mixing those two together will give me the right amount of brightness, and then we can go in with the Everywhere pen again to highlight anything that we really do want to highlight, but this is mainly for the under eyes and concealing aspect. And I'm gonna place small dots on my under eye area. This one is still probably gonna be a little too light for the rest of my face, so I think I'm gonna go in with a different concealer. Let's see how this blends in a minute. I'm gonna let it sit first and I'm gonna let it settle. But I think for the rest of my face, for safety purposes, I'm going to go in with the Sephora Best Skin Ever in 26N. And I'm gonna put it on my jawline just to highlight this area here, and I'm using the big foundation brush for this so I can get a mix of the actual foundation in this concealer mix, so it's not too distinctly different from the rest of my face. Now that the concealer on the rest of my face is blended out, it's time to get into the scary part, I think, is blending this under eye. Yeah, I am very nervous for this one. It is going to be much lighter than I think I intended it to be, but we're gonna figure it out because these mistakes can always be fixed, because makeup is an art and it is about learning and fixing, and then everything always comes together because it takes practice. Not everything's gonna be perfect all the time on the first shot. So I'm using this dome brush here, and I am patting this first in the areas I want to cover the most. Oh, this is pretty close. Okay, I'm gonna pat it in, and then as I get further back away from this area here, where I know that my dark circles are, I will start doing small sweeping motions. And on the lid, I'm just gonna use this as a primer, so I don't really have to go too set with that. I'm just gonna do larger motions. You know what? This concealer shade isn't too bad. It's definitely bright, but it's not too bad. It looks like it was an even mix of the two, so I think it goes pretty well together. I look like something out of your nightmares right now. Just completely ghastly and scary. We're going to fix this. It looks like they may have used the Conceal and Correct palette as a bronzing palette, in this, which is perfectly fine and perfectly normal. I just don't want to use my RCMA kit quite yet for that. I would more than likely go in with, very appropriately named, the Man Eater bronzer from Tarte. This is the shade Sundown. So it's a similar shade to what she had. It's just I'm not mixing it together on my own. I really like this. It's a very light bronze, but I think I'm gonna do my blush first. I'm assuming they used the Correct and Conceal palette for their bronzer because they also didn't list their blush. So there's a very high possibility when things like that happen, they tend to not list the stuff that's not from other companies. So there's a really good possibility that her bronzer and her blush are from a completely different brand. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the same. I'm also gonna look at her blush placement on her cheeks. She kind of has her blush set in the front here on the apples of her cheek, which is something that I don't normally do anymore. So this is gonna be fun. I think I'm gonna mix these two together. This is Venusian Rose from Narcissus Beauty as well as Drunken Flesh from the High Point Blush collections. I think mixing these two together will give me a similar color to what she has. So I've already put Venusian Rose on the back of this. I'm putting some of Drunken Flesh just to balance out that pinkiness. So I'm using the back of this brush here to mix it together. And then I'm going to place it right where my pupil ends, kind of like where the arch of my brow ends a little bit. Then I'm gonna pull it back, which sounds horrifying to me because I usually start from up here and then pull it back. This is really gonna focus it in the center of my cheeks. And I don't really do that, but it's fine. This is for the art. This is how it goes. And I'm gonna take the Morphe E48 brush, which is like this dome brush here, and do some light patting motions. This is definitely the same color on me that it is on her, which is nice. So, hey, I'm so good at my job. Now it's looking a little crazy. It's looking a little crazy. We're just gonna rock with it. Hers is a little bit lower than mine, I think. I can only commit to the bit so much, really. But I'm gonna try and blend it downwards to fill the face instead of snatch the face. And most of this will be covered with bronzer as well. So we can retouch any blush and update it once we have the bronzer laid down as well. Because bronzer after blush, because you burn and then you tan. Yeah, this one's definitely a lot higher than this one. It's fine. It's fine. It always is. So normally I would never do the bronzer stick like this, but I really don't want to put this on the back of this hand because it hurts. I'm not wearing a splint, but it hurts so bad right now. So I don't want to put anything that'll make me go like this and like keep it like that, because this is how I heard it the first time. So I'm gonna commit a mortal sin and just put the bronzer straight on my face. I'm sorry to every other artist who's watching this and is like, she's a fraud. She's not supposed to be doing this. I know, I'm hurting. Forgive me. And then I'm taking a contour brush like this. I have no idea where this is from. And I'm going to buff it upwards. We want to make it look like we've been outside in the sun, and I actually may need to use a slightly darker one for this. Or I may just have to go in with bronzer again. I think I do like this shade a lot though, because it is very cool on me. So it is more of a contour, which I appreciate. All right, I'm gonna have to commit and put it on the back of my hand. This is gonna hurt and not be fun. I'm gonna have to mix two. I'm gonna use the Rare Beauty one and the Tarte Man Eater one again. I don't wanna do that part. It hurts. So on the back of my hand, on the back of my hand, I'm gonna put a little bit of shade. What is this? I don't know. It's Rare Beauty. And then I'm gonna use the Man Eater as well and mix it here. And then with this brush, I'm gonna mix the two of them together. Buffing motions as before. And then once that's laid down, I can probably honestly maybe go in with something a little darker as well for the bronzer, because it's still not giving the same bronziness that she had. But I am gonna go in with a little bit more of this blush, and I may have just overdone it, so that's good. And we are going to slowly buff this back, and I'm gonna go in with the bronzer again. I definitely just overdid it. Yes! Now I gotta do it on the other side as well. So now with your bronzer brush, you're gonna go in and blend everything together and hope and pray for the best. Pretty close. We'll go in with a darker powder bronzer as well, because it looks like there's a lot of powder involved here that they did not list, which is valid and understandable. But now that our creams are done, it's time to go in with my favorite Hourglass Veil powder. And I'm very excited for this part because it will kind of save everything. So we're gonna take a little bit of this on a brush and I'm gonna pat, pat, pat. I'm gonna shake a little bit of the excess off. I'm gonna go like this, and I'm gonna look down, and I'm gonna start on my chin. I'm gonna pat. We're not baking yet. When it comes to the under eyes, we are gonna set, but we have to buff everything out first. So I'm gonna use the same brush we used for our concealer. I'm gonna look down like this, and then I'm also gonna look in the mirror as I'm doing this and press this in first. I'm gonna do the same thing on my lids. All right, now that set one is done, we're gonna brush away anything that may be a little too much. And then we're going to go in with the MAC Studio Fix powder. If you know anything about this powder, then you know that the lore runs very deep with the reformulation that they did recently. They took out the talc, which is very controversial. As an artist, I'm like really upset about it. As a person, I guess I understand where they're coming from. Like, I guess you have to sell it without talc in certain countries, and I get it, but it does change the finish of it, and it doesn't necessarily last as long, and it doesn't have the same oil control and the stay power and everything like that. And I feel the same way about the Ben Nylu setting powders that I feel about this, but I understand why they did it. So I caved and bought the new one because I didn't have the old one. So this is shade NC25. And what we're going to do is take it and we're going to set it in the areas that we just put the setting powder. I like to put it in the main T-zone area where I want the most pigment. I'm going to use the mirror in here as well. I'm also going to use the sponge that they gave me. I'm gonna fold my lips like this, and I'm gonna press in the areas that I want the most coverage. I'm gonna make that the center of the face, and then I'm going to do the outer part of this eye, of both eyes here. I'm gonna put a little bit here so it's not as harsh, but the main focus of this powder is going to be from here back. With the very broken Pat McGrath medium powder, I'm going to take the same sponge and I'm going to press it in the cornea area of my eye. I'm gonna blend it into that MAC Studio Fix that we put on so it looks cohesive. Okay, now your powder is set, which means it's time to go to your powder products. I am gonna commit another sin and I am gonna go in with bronzer first. So I'm gonna use the Too Faced Chocolate Soleil bronzer on the same brush that I used the cream one on before. And I'm gonna be generous with it this time. I'm gonna tap off any excess and I'm going to start at my forehead because that's where we want the most bronzeness for this specific look. My forehead is not as large as Doja's, so I don't have the same amount of surface area, and I probably should have adjusted the look for such, but you know, can't always win them all. I'm gonna just take a little bit of the Hourglass powder and use it as a buffer here, so it's not as, you know, criminally low. And I'll put a little bit on here for good measure. But just whatever's left over on the brush. I'm not gonna add more. Your bronzer, done. Fabulous. Now it's time for powder blush. Now, because I don't necessarily have a powder blush that is the same color as the color that I mixed for my cheeks, I am actually going to use the Pat McGrath. I believe this is shade Art of the Swoon in the Bridgerton palette, which is not something I thought I would be using today, but it's the color I got. I'm gonna use a puffy brush. It's the dual-ended blush and contour brush from Persona. And I'm gonna really focus this in the center here. Yeah, that color is pretty damn close. And again, putting it really in the like apples. And if you're struggling to find your apples, don't do a little smile. And if you feel like you went a little too heavy-handed, that's okay. Just blend it in with some bronzer. And to soften out the edges a little bit, I'm going with the same brush that I used for the Hourglass powder. Seems biblically accurate to me. Now that your base is done, it's time for the eyes. I don't have a lot of MAC eye products. I think I can get away with using the Narcissus palette and shades from the Lorac Pro palette. So we're gonna play around with this. I already laid down my concealer, so I don't really need to use like a paint pot. That was my equivalent of a paint pot, to be entirely fair. So I'm gonna go in with Echo from the Narcissus palette, as well as, I think, Cream from the Lorac Pro palette. I think those two shades together will give me the initial base that I want to put on the eyes. So they don't even have the shades really listed on there, so I'm going to play around and kind of go off of vibes here. I'm gonna go in with a little bit of taupe from the Lorac palette. I'm gonna swatch this first to see how it looks. We're going to use taupe as a transition shade. I'm gonna take a little bit of this and start from the back V and move that up and forward towards like the nose as if it's a contour. We're gonna start deep in the crease and bring it out and treat it like our nose contour here. I'd say that's pretty close to the color. There's definitely more orange in the shade that she used, so I'm gonna use a different shade, I think, on top of this one to really emphasize that redness. And that shade is going to be Reflection from the Narcissus palette. And then just to soften it out a bit, I am gonna take a clean brush and blend out the edges. It also looks like this taupe color that they use, or this brown color that they use on the top in the crease, is also brought forward, like in this area here. So I'm gonna take a little bit of that reflection shade and put it here on the outer V as well. Much better. I was sitting here wondering why it wasn't looking right, and then I realized that that is the one thing that I was missing, is bringing that shade down to the lid. She also has a bright white in her inner corner, which I think is fun. So instead of using a like shimmery highlight, they use a white as a highlight. I might use a more pigmented white, I think. I'm gonna use Aura, which it has a little bit of shimmer to it in the inner corner, just because regular whites don't necessarily look amazing on me. But Aura doesn't have like a crazy amount of shimmer that it can't pass. And I'm using a flat brush to sort of drag it in, and then I'll buff it out with a clean brush. Eyeshadow done. Really, really wanting to have this eyeliner bring it together because she's a little tough right now. So I don't have the MAC liners, but I do have the Sephora Kohl liners, which is kind of the same thing as the MAC ones. I sharpened it. It's good to go. We are going to mimic this liner as best as humanly possible, but it seems like a pretty standard liner. I'm gonna look down into this mirror, kind of like this. I'll widen my eyes. I'm gonna go like this. I'm gonna pop my head down like this, and I'm gonna follow where my waterline ends, and I'm gonna draw the first wing. And it's super important you sharpen your pencil for this part. You can create the outline of your wing first before you actually go in with it and color it in. So mine is a little too curved. I need it to be more straight, and I've never been good at getting things to be straight. Okay, I had to do my eyeliner off screen because I was starting to freak out and it was making me really mad. So it's done now. I made it as close as humanly possible. It's a little more straight than hers is. You know what? You can't win them all, okay? Sometimes you just gotta take the L. I'm gonna go in with the Norvina Chroma Stick in my waterline here to open the eyes up. Now that the eyes are eyelined and watery, we're going to be using the MAC Elevated Stack Lash Mascara. Now, I'm not going in with falsies. That's just simply not gonna happen today. My eyes are too sensitive for that. And I really like the brush for this one because it gives it a nice little curve. It has like a nice fun little eye shape, and you can shake and roll, and it helps curve and lift your lashes as well. It's also super pigmented, and it makes your lashes ridiculously long. So it's not like I even need falsies anyway, because this kind of mimics that. And we all know my method. It's the roll and wiggle to get the most out of it. Hey! No! I got the mascara, my contact. I'm not having a good day. I am having a good day. Everything is gonna be fine, and I'm gonna be okay. And everything is fine, and nothing is that big of a deal ever, like at all. Because life is constantly changing, and I'm okay. And don't forget to do your bottom lashes. So we've got the white liner in, we've got the liner, the eyeliner done. We got the mascara done. The elevated stack mascara is really nice because it really does mimic false lashes. So the thicker and the longer your lashes are, the more like falsies they'll look. So I do really like this, and I think it gave me a really nice doll eye effect on the bottom. It is time for the iconic lip color. We have Lady Danger right here in the flesh. There she is, that beautiful orange red color. I am not really the biggest fan of orange reds, but I do think this is a very cute one. I have played with it before. I haven't necessarily worn it myself. I don't even think I own a shade that's similar to this, and I do own a lot of reds. So I know that they use the lip liner Cherry. My store didn't have that available, so I'm gonna be using Chili Rimmed. It's a little bit darker than the actual color, but it blends really well, and it's mainly just for me to use as a way to outline my lips. So I'm gonna take the Mirror and the Narcissus palette again. Not cleaning off my lips, mind you. I have foundation on them. I really don't care. It's gonna help me get a more accurate color and shape. And her lips are fairly round in this, so it's not super sharp. Okay, we've got the initial lining down. Now it is time to paint, and I am so extremely, things are falling. Even the items are excited. I am so excited to put this on. Right. Oh,
stunning.
Yeah. That swatch. She's gorgeous. And she's so pigmented. She goes right over Chili Rimmed. This is like an accessory and an outfit on its own. Is it bad to say that I kind of like it more with Chili Rimmed instead of a brighter red like Cherry? I really do think it brings it out more and gives it a little more definition. It makes your teeth look so white. Oh my God, this thing is bright as ever. So this is pretty much where we're gonna end this. I'm gonna set it, and then let's do a little montage. We're gonna be using the Final Seal from Ben Nye and the Kryolan Fixing Spray to lock this all in. Cement. Ugh. And that is the final look of me recreating the Doja Cat VMAs look. I am so abundantly A, impressed with myself, B, excited that I finally got my hands on this color. The VMAs are one of the most iconic award shows. I'm pretty sure we got Miley What's Good from that. We got Britney's Snake Slave for You dance. So it's not a shock that we got Sabrina's Tears performance and the eating the lipstick on the red carpet. So to see all that again was very exciting, and I'm so glad that I got to do this look. And if you want to see me recreate any other looks, by all means, please let me know down in the comments what was your favorite look from the VMAs, because I want to know what you thought. Who was your favorite performer? What did you like? What did you dislike? Who was the best dress? Who was the worst dress? Tell me everything you think, because I definitely have some commentary on that if you want to hear my thoughts. All right, everyone, that is all I have for you today. Let me know what you want to see from me in the comments, and I will see you in 2 weeks. Bye.